I wanted to talk today about singing covers, how to sing better and how to find your own voice, especially when a lot of what you do is singing other people's material. From my own experience, singing other people's material has affected my ability to find my own voice, and that's for someone who had a bit of sort of character, or I mentioned this in another video, I feel like I'm repeating myself, there'll be a lot of that. I think I've always had character in my voice, always had a bit of grit that I couldn't help almost. It was just the way I sang, and that comes from a character sort of thing and a tension that was always there. I was adding grit all the time. I almost find it harder to sing clean, I always used to say. But even though I had a bit of character and sort of passion in my delivery and those sorts of things, which all it did was destroy my voice, I thought it sounded good. Other people thought it sounded good. It wasn't healthy. I'm someone who perhaps had a bit of character and personality in the way that I did things, but I still was mimicking loads of people. And I've done a discussion on my other channel, separate thing, talking about singing covers in a range of other ways and what that does to you as a performer, and doing the kind of gigs that I've spent a lot of time doing, and a lot of people do as professional musicians, weddings and parties and public gigs, and just playing that role of being a covers band and a covers act. But as a singer, it pulls your voice all over the place. And it's incredibly hard not to mimic the artists that you're covering. Even to some extent, even just a little bit, I think you're always pulling your voice in a direction that's not exactly you. By default, that's got to be the case, hasn't it? If there's anything personal about how we write songs or perform, then by default, you sing other people's songs, you're bound to be doing something that isn't quite you, or that is maybe not how you would have done it, or it's just, pulling your voice in a way that is outside of your comfort zone in a range of different ways. And obviously a lot of singing that people do is singing other people's material. And there are some people out there who are brilliant at always sounding like themselves. Some people really don't have this problem. They just sing. I've got a straw in my hand. You might not know what that's about. Some of you will. And thanks for all the comments, by the way, on this very new channel. Honestly, it means the world, and it's really perked me up in trying to survive this planet Earth that we live on, which is a very hard place to survive. So I'm just going to carry on being myself while I do these things. And I've just turned the camera on and started talking about this. I did a bit of a similar thread last week, which is feeding into it, but the rest is just off the top of my head. So singing covers and trying to improve your voice by singing like yourself, it's really hard not to mimic. Some people are better at that than others, and they just kind of sing songs like themselves. But I think you're always going to be, where are you within that then? Are you able to sing songs and just sound like yourself no matter what you do? And how well, therefore, does your voice apply to other songs and other people's material? Do you always sound good on every song that you sing? I think depending on the range of material you're covering, you're bound to hit a point where it's not you sounding at your best. And I think you can't really avoid some up and down in terms of consistency when you're singing a range of material, like a range of sort of classic covers, perhaps, where you have to switch styles quite a lot, which is what I've always had the experience of doing, just doing general covers. I find from one song to the next sometimes a really hard transition. What was it I always asked not to do? I think I always asked not to do Sex on Fire before Message in a Bottle. I think it was. They often ended up in the set next to each other, and I said we need to change those around. I just cannot go from Sex on Fire into Message on a Bottle very nicely. I have to really kind of reset my voice and think differently. And Sting is a very unique kind of singer in the way that he uses his head voice and the way that he sings so light, and he's got a beautiful high range. But for going from something where you're sort of raspy, belting it out in a bit more of a rock style, and then trying to find that light tone, I just couldn't go from one to the other. And I just wanted a song that set me up to sing the Police track better. And that's the first example that springs to mind of switching styles like that. and I've always been someone who can't help but mimic, and I fall into that trap. I've just started warming up today, so I'm not really on it. That's why I've got a straw in my hand. If you know, you know. If you don't, watch out on another video about using a straw. It's a really useful exercise. So I always have this trouble of mimicking and I just think you pull your voice all over the place singing other people's material. If you do that sort of covers game where you're being 25 different singers in a night, it's bound to have an effect. And you kind of don't know where you are, and it changes your technique every song sometimes. And that is really not helpful when you're trying to fix things or get a good technique in the first place. If you are struggling with breathing, if you're struggling with placement, if you're struggling with the balance of muscles and getting into your passaggio, getting into your bridge and your head voice without struggle, without strain, then a real method to make that hard is to sing 20 different people in a night and not have a break to think about it in between, because you're in a performance and you've got to just go and try and do it. And you can be halfway through a song before you start to find it, or you can be all the way through a song and never feel comfortable. And on another night, you might not struggle in the same way, but that just shows you how it's always a moving target. And when you're moving the target by changing the style of singer every song or two, it's really a hindrance to getting your technique sorted out. How do you find your own voice then? I think the most basic, maybe boring answer is to work on your voice away from songs and work on the voice in a mechanical sense and a technical sense, and remove as much colouring as possible in terms of the way that you deliver it, in terms of the style, and just try and sing really pure, and try songs almost removing as much character from it as you can, removing as much style and from it, and just sing the notes in a very pure way. So you work on your voice mechanically, you work on just trying to get things to feel right. If you get your voice to feel right, if you get rid of all the things that don't feel right, that are getting in the way, all the technical stuff that I talked about on my first couple of videos here that you'll see loads of people talking about, you fix your technique and you try not to over stylize it. You try not to over sound like something, because often what we're trying to sound like is the mix of the song. It's the production. It's the way it's been compressed. It's the reverb. It's like all these things that are letting it jump right out at us. We often fool ourselves into trying to replicate that in a room with nothing, with no production helping. So really, really one of the crucial things when you're trying to find your own voice is to be able to actually hear what the singers are doing and not be fooled by the production. You really got to watch out for that. And not be fooled by what you think they are doing with their voice as well, because often it's very misleading and we get this sense that it's something big and powerful. The classic mistake of going for big notes, high notes, as if they're big, because they're not big, they're small, they're thin, they're tiny, they're fast. They don't need to be thought of as big. So when we hear what we think is a singer doing something, often they're doing something a lot easier, a lot more effortless than we believe. So we've got to watch out for those sorts of things. If you have trouble with your voice and you're similar to me where you're singing a lot of covers, this is my experience, and I destroyed my voice over the years with all this tension that I had. I had an operation, my voice still isn't, physically where it should be. Technically, I'm 10 times better than I ever was. Unfortunately, I've damaged it along the road. That's how it's gone. If you're anything like me and you've got any sort of struggles in your voice and you're singing lots of different covers in one night, then stop. I don't know. It's really hard. If you rely on the money and you've got to just keep gigging and keep gigging and keep gigging, it's really difficult to fix some of those things because the old habits just creep back in. But try and sing things pure. Maybe try and see where you can have a similar approach to a few songs and sing those in the same way, and stop trying to mimic one artist, but just find your own comfortable way of singing certain phrases and passages, and just sort of clean it up a little bit. Take some intensity out of it. Try and ease off the over expression of things in your practice, and just sing really pure and really clean, and try and find a comfortable way to hit those notes. Try and find a different way to hit those notes. Almost play with the range of styles, or start to recognize the range of styles that you've got, the range of styles that you're being asked to do, the range of kind of textures, light and shade, heavy and light, whatever, using the same word there, but whatever, different ways of finding the extremes in dynamic that you have in your voice. What's the heaviest way you can hit that? Does that feel uncomfortable? What's the lightest way you could sing that? What's in between? Play around with your tones, actually play around with these things and think about it a little bit instead of sort of turning up and just singing and switching and changing and all that stuff. I said in this other thing that I did talking about singing covers that sometimes I kind of enjoy mimicking the artists. Sometimes I get a kick out of being able to sound like a lot of different people to some extent. Sometimes that's a real hindrance. And I think part of the reason I do that is also almost I'm bored to death of singing those songs. They're not me. It's very hard to be yourself when it isn't your song anyway, when you wouldn't sing that, when you're not into the song, when you're not passionately into it, especially if you've sung it 1,000 times, you get bored and it doesn't feel like you anymore. I think artists probably feel like that about their own songs. I do, about songs of mine from years ago. They almost feel like a cover. But I think some artists don't want to sing their biggest hits because they're in a completely different place to what they were when they wrote it. So you can have that problem within your own material as well. But at least it was still a part of your history, your story, something you created. It's so different when you're doing covers. It's so far from that. And it's really hard to feel something or express it authentically when you don't feel it, when you didn't write it. Never mind the fact that you wouldn't write in the same way. You'd maybe sing a different series of notes. You do something different in the way that you might write a song, given maybe someone else has written the chords and you're just a singer. In whatever context that puts you in a similar place, writing a song in a similar way, you may not do it the same. So you're always out of your comfort zone. You're always being somebody else. It's a really, really tricky thing. I'm maybe not following where I'm going and coming back, round again to what I was beginning to say, but I'm just thinking on the top of my head about these things. My advice is to sing as pure as you can and to also try a range of textures and a range of approaches in one song. Try and practice a song to remove the bits that you feel like you're mimicking someone with, and just sing it comfortably and try and find the sound that is you without you adding anything extra to it. And then maybe find where you can add a bit of rasp or grit to it. If you do these things incrementally and gradually, you're finding it within yourself. You're finding it within your own voice. You're finding that range that you've got. And then when you can play with that, you can play with the extra grit or rasp or compression, or you can not. You can choose not to. And also, listen to people's live versions. Please listen to what people do live. Listen to the artists singing those songs live. Maybe listen to other people covering it as well. Try not to do it like the record. Try not to just replicate the record for the reasons I said a minute ago, where you're often trying to replicate the production and all sorts of things. Hear a live version, hear what they're doing, hear them cheat almost and make it easier for themselves, and not maybe. I was watching a Muse track for a student the other day, and instead of him kind of dropping into his chest voice and going back up to head voice and having a real difference in the way that it sounded on record, live, he was just Matt Bellamy. He was just kind of sailing in and out of. It was kind of all in a head voice. It was a really nice, light sort of mixy sound, and he was just kind of. He didn't drop back down into this chestiness on a few key moments where you noticed it on the record, for example. So watch what they do live, because you make it much more easy for yourself when you're just trying to sing it. And who cares whether you're in mix or light mix or bloody this, that, or the other? Who cares? What cares is that it's comfortable and free. From someone who's had an operation and been through loads of tension and all those problems, you're much happier that it just feels easy. And it is possible for it to feel easy. Doesn't matter whether you're in what configuration you're in. If you can make it sound pleasing and feel good, who cares? Who cares exactly? those sorts of things maybe have a better place in the studio where you really need to get those bits right. But live, you can play with it. You can play with it and do it in your own way as it feels. And it might be different the next night. It might be different the next week. So yeah, just I think singing covers, and especially when you're doing I've got a gig tonight with the band, so I'll be doing 25 covers in a not very nice room. It's probably more. There's a couple more songs than that actually, but it's a really hard surface, low ceilings, nasty room, glass doors round the back of where we're playing, drums hitting a glass bloody door both sides. Really unpleasant sort of room, not the best to get a good sound in. And we've got in-ears, it's just a lifesaver. And I've got 3 gigs on the trot this week, so I think what I'll do is go easy tonight. I'll try and go easy on a lot of things. And I might take some of my own advice, and I might think, how would I sing this? How can I remove any mimicking? How can I remove any little inflections that are me just doing an impression of the artist and just sing it like me? And maybe, dare I say, try and connect to it emotionally to help with that as well. Not always easy. But yeah, give me your feedback on this stuff. What do you struggle with when you're singing other people's material? Do you sing your own songs as well as other people's material? Which songs do you struggle with mostly? Why is that? What is there something I've said that might make you try out a song that you struggle with and just try and approach it differently, and just instead of trying to be that artist, just remove as much of that as possible and just play around with the series of notes that it's asking you to sing, maybe without even the words. You just hum it. You'd use a straw for it. You sing one vowel sound instead of all the consonants and vowels that make up the words. Break down the song into a little exercise and just take yourself as far away from doing a version, doing an impression, mimicking the artist as you possibly can. I think that's what I'm going to try tonight a little bit. There are moments where you almost have to mimic a bit because you have to switch styles. It's a real tricky thing, and I don't know, some singers are maybe better at switching styles. Some singers are maybe good at just sounding like themselves and they just always sing like themselves, and it maybe lacks something on certain songs, sounds good on others or whatever. It's a hard game. It's hard to be authentic doing a set of covers that is widely ranged and doesn't fit all in the same bracket. So if anyone does a similar job to me where they've spent years doing that, give yourself a break if you have technical issues with your voice, and maybe have a look at the fact that it could be the set list and the fact that that's all you ever do, or most of what you do, or you're doing it frequently. It's the set of songs that's causing your voice some of the problems you're having. You know, not being able to solidify a method and a technique down is completely understandable when you're being thrown all over the place and doing something maybe light and easy in one song and a similar range of notes in a heavy, distorted rock way in the next song, and just you don't know who you are. And if you're still trying to fix your voice or get your technique feeling right, that's going to trouble you. It's going to throw you all over the place. So you're just looking for comfort and ease, and maybe to stop trying too hard to sound like like what you think you're hearing on record. Again, watch them live and look at what they're actually doing with the voice and how far away it is from what you think's going on the record. It's a really interesting journey learning that, and I've had to be on it. I've made all those mistakes of overpowering the rasp and the grit and never getting control of it, and then realizing that the whole thing should have felt a hell of a lot easier because they're not shouting, these people, when they're doing it on record. So that's just my thought for this week, because I haven't put a video up for a couple of weeks. It's been Easter, blah, blah, blah. I'm a very, very busy person with lots of other things. I'm hoping this will take over a bit more gradually. But I can't thank you enough for all your comments so far on this channel. It's been absolutely fantastic start for me. I hope there's some thoughts here that are useful. Give me your feedback and let me know what you're thinking. I am available for lessons online and in person. You can find me on my website, which is singingmatters.co.uk. I've really been enjoying teaching some people all over the world in the last few weeks, which is fantastic. So I also offer a free consultation. If you want a 15-minute video call, I can have a little listen to you and give you a voice assessment and tell you what I think you should work on in 15 minutes. And then you can decide whether you want to book from there. I hope this has been useful to maybe just refreshing how you're thinking about covers and how you're thinking about how you approach songs. Maybe just giving you an idea to just go, okay, I'm going to try this differently. I'm going to try a couple of things differently and see what you can find. I hope it's been useful. It's a bit of just a random discussion for this week, but I'll leave you with that. Good luck with your singing. Good luck with any performances you have this week, and I'll see you on the next video.